Spring R. Miller was born on November 24, 1971, to Diana Barlow and Johnny Miller. She had a brother Hal and two sisters, April and Rita. She lived in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and attended Highland High School. On the night of January 29, 1988, Spring and her sister April went for a walk. At around 7:15, they arrived at Montgomery Boulevard and stopped at the entrance of an apartment building's parking lot. A white and blue 4x4 truck was waiting to exit. Spring and April waited to let him pass. The man in the truck smiled and motioned for them to cross, and the pair did. As Spring and April walked across the road, the driver suddenly accelerated. The truck struck both of them. Spring was hit on the head and April on the legs. April was able to get up and try to signal a woman in the parking lot for help, but the woman reportedly refused to talk to her. There were several witnesses at a nearby church, and an ambulance was called. April and Spring were transported to the University of New Mexico Hospital, where Spring died of massive head injuries within an hour. April was treated and eventually released. Spring was laid to rest in the same pink Motley Crue t-shirt that she was wearing and was buried in Sunset Memorial Park in Albuquerque. The driver who hit and killed Spring Miller has still not been found, even with police efforts. April described him as a man in his mid-20s with long, thin, dark hair and brown eyes. Following this statement from April, police released sketches to the public in hopes of catching the perpetrator. Despite these sketches, no leads were made on the hit and run of the Miller sisters. April died on May 25, 1997, of an overdose. Longmont police in June of 2020 posted to Facebook a sketch of a man suspected in a home invasion and attempted assault of a child that occurred in the 1600 block of Kimbark Street, Colorado at 3:45 a.m. June 28. According to police, the man illegally entered the home and fled on foot. The intruder is described standing 5 feet 6 inches to 5 feet 8 inches tall, with short black hair and a heavy build. This suspect was later apprehended in Cobb County, Georgia in February of 2021. The doodler is an unidentified serial killer believed responsible for between 6 and 16 murders and 3 assaults of men in San Francisco between January 1974 and September 1975. The nickname was given due to the perpetrator's habit of sketching his victims prior to stabbing them to death. The perpetrator met his victims at gay nightclubs, restaurants, and bars. The doodler was described as a black man between 19 and 25 years of age. He was about 6 feet tall with a slender build. Several victims were stabbed in the front and back of their bodies in similar locations. All of the victims were white males. Police theorized that the victims had all died after meeting with the doodler near locations where their bodies were discovered. The case is open and ongoing in the San Francisco Police Department. Recent successes using DNA technology developed in the decades since the crimes have led police to re-examine evidence in the case. In February of 2019, police offered a $100,000 reward for information regarding the doodler and released a revised sketch showing what he could look like 4 decades later. Activist Harvey Milk publicly expressed empathy for the victims who refused to speak with police, stating, "I understand their position. I respect the pressure society has put on them." Milk elaborated that the 3 men likely feared damaging relationships with family and in the workplace, as he believed that only a small minority in San Francisco were open about their sexualities. The I-70 killer is an unidentified American serial killer who is known to have killed 6 store clerks in the Midwestern United States during the spring of 1992. The victims were usually young, petite, brunette women. One of his victims was a man, but it is speculated that the killer mistook him for a woman due to the store having a woman's name and the victim having long hair. The stores were all specialty stores, and the majority were robbed of only small amounts of cash. The killer is also suspected of shooting 3 more clerks in Texas during 1993 and 1994, one of whom survived, as well as a 2001 murder of a clerk in Indiana. Based on witness testimonies, police strongly believe that the murder weapon may have been an Intratec Scorpion or an Air America ET-22 pistol, but they have not been able to rule out any other .22 caliber firearm models. The ammunition used in the killings was .22 caliber CCI copper-clad lead bullets. Midwest authorities linked the killer to the shootings in Texas in 1994, but the Texas authorities were not convinced of a connection as different guns were used in each spree. Based on witness descriptions, investigators were able to produce 2 composite sketches of the killer and a physical description of the suspect. The I-70 killer was described as being a thin white male in his 20s or 30s, between 5 foot 7 inches and 5 foot 9 inches tall, with lazy eyelids and sandy blonde or reddish hair in 1992. During the initial investigation, 2 individuals were investigated and eliminated as suspects. One, Donald Waterhouse from Dyer County, Tennessee, and another, Sean Patrick Goebel from Asheboro, North Carolina. In 2021, the St. Charles Police Department published age-progressed versions of the original composite sketch to show what the killer might look like today. Investigators believe the killer is between 52 and 70 years old if he is still alive. Sarah Beard was a freshman sociology student at the University of New Mexico. She lived in an apartment near the campus on Grand Avenue in Albuquerque. At 4 p.m. on the 8th of December, 1988, her mother Susan arrived there. Sarah had not responded to phone calls for nearly 24 hours and had not been seen doing so since 1 p.m. on December the 7th. Susan then obtained a key to the apartment from the landlord. When she entered, Susan found blood on the floor and the apartment in disarray. Susan was petrified. She called out for Sarah and looked around for her but could not initially find her. Suddenly, Susan heard a rasping noise coming from the far side of Sarah's bed. She found her lying there, unconscious. She immediately called 911. Sarah had been raped, beaten, and struck in the back of the head with a hammer no fewer than 11 times. 3 of the hammer blows caused skull fractures. Her jaw was also fractured, and her inner ear was damaged. A nerve in her right eye was also ripped. Sarah was rushed to Presbyterian Hospital where she underwent 3 hours of surgery. The surgeries were finally finished sometime around 1 a.m. on December the 9th. Susan and her husband, Jim, finally went home around 2 a.m. after talking to the surgeon. The next morning, it was made apparent to Sarah's parents that she had regained consciousness. Due to her injuries, she could neither speak nor move her arms, but she seemed to be fully aware. In an effort to communicate, her father Jim asked her to squeeze his hand when she heard the first letter of his first name. He went through the alphabet. When he reached J, she responded with a faint hand squeeze. He said it was a great relief when he knew that he was able to communicate with his daughter on some level. Encouraged with the results, Sarah's parents decided to try the hand squeeze again. This time, they hoped she would identify her attacker. Jim asked Sarah to squeeze his hand when they got to the first letter of her attacker's first name. Patiently, Jim went through the alphabet again. When he reached W, Sarah squeezed his hand. Jim and Susan tried to think of her friends whose names began with that letter. They first asked if it was her friend Will, but she did not respond. When they asked if it was her friend Wadada, she squeezed Jim's hand. Wadada, the man Sarah had acknowledged as her attacker, was known only by that single name. He was a transient and hanger-on at the University of New Mexico. He fancied himself an artist and mooched off various students, having no livelihood of his own. But police could not press charges on the strength of a hand squeeze. Sarah needed to verbally name her attacker. Finally, on Christmas Day, Sarah regained the ability to speak. 3 weeks later, a detective from Albuquerque named Ernie Rivera interviewed her for the first time. He asked her who attacked her, and Sarah verbalized that it was Wadada. She said on the day of the attack, December 7th, was toward the end of the semester. On that day, she was working on several final projects. She said she was in a bit of a panic trying to get them done. As she was getting ready to go over to the campus and do some work, she heard a knock on the door. It was Wadada. When Sarah opened the door, Wadada came in. She told him that she had to go to class. He told her that he would not keep her for long. He asked her if she had a small paintbrush. She showed Wadada where they were and told him that he could borrow any of them. Sarah again said she had to leave and that she was in a hurry because her class started in 20 minutes. He then asked her where something was on campus. She told him that she would show him. As Sarah finally turned around to put her shoes on, Wadada came from behind and grabbed her. He put his arm around her neck and held a weapon to it. He told her not to make a sound or he would kill her. For the next 45 minutes, Wadada violated and attacked Sarah with a hammer, eventually knocking her unconscious. Wadada is between 5'7" and 5'9" tall, weighing around 140 pounds with a thin build. At the time of the attack, he was in his late 30s or early 40s. He wore a beard and his hair in locks. Reportedly, his right hand is also deformed, the fingers permanently bunched together in a claw-like form. He has scars on the palm and back of both hands and a burn mark in the center of his right hand. His right arm seems withered. Additionally, Wadada has used various aliases such as Anthony Maris and Jay Sun and listed his birthplace as Guyana. He has been known to live in Santa Fe, Miami, and Brooklyn. He speaks with an accent that some have described as French Caribbean or Ethiopian. He is speculated to be fluent in Spanish and is also believed to be a Rastafarian. Police say Wadada is capable of extreme violence and is believed to be mentally ill. He is wanted on charges of aggravated battery, attempted murder, and criminal sexual penetration.